Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mr. Recon and I'm going to bring you a new tier list for you guys. Now before we get into the video, please remember that this is PvP only and it is endgame specific, meaning teams that are all LB5, nothing else. And before we get into the video, if you have not subscribed to the channel and you're new here, please do. Your support is really appreciated. And now let's get into the video. Alrighty ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start at tier 0 and work our way down, but before we do, I just want to mention that there is a note section on the side that gives you a little brief description of the tier list and what's going on within the meta. And then also in the top right we have a chart for antiques, so if you're new or semi-new and you don't know, let's say, what echoes or fake crystal is, you can look up in the top right and find them, and you can see a picture of them so you know what they are in game. Now if you have any detailed questions, I would like to remind you, and in the video I'll remind you again, to ask in my Discord or the official Discord. That way you can get the best help you can as possible, because not everything is going to be answered here, because everyone's teams are going to be different. My team's not going to be the same as yours. Your team's not going to be the same as your friends and your server. Everyone's a little bit different. Alrighty, a little side note before we get into the actual tier list. Just remember that the main point in this meta right now is going to be damage reduction, passive damage, and speed. Speed is going to be the most important part. Having the faster girls is going to get you to able to do damage first, or get your actives off first, which can be very important in the meta. Damage reduction also to reduce the amount of damage your girls take, and the passive damage, which gets around certain aspects of girls' abilities in the game. So just remember that as we're going through the list. Those are going to be your important factors that you want to focus on building a team. Okay, first off, we're going to start off in the Phylum, aka Neff. She is tier 0. She is the best girl in the game right now. Most everybody's going to be running one of these in their team because she's just so important. Two things to be taken away. You can either build a tank version or a speed version of her. Usually the first version needs to be a speed version, and you want to do a energy antique on her to make her go first to get her Phylum mark off. She is high in damage reduction. She does a lot of passive damage. She also has high speed, as I said earlier, and she has the ability to put a health debuff mark on the enemy girls at the end of round with her end of round passive damage, to make it to where that they can't heal, and it stacks. So every end of turn, she will add one to it. Of course, Baptism can remove it, or some other girls have the ability to remove it right now in the meta, but that is a huge deal in keeping the enemy girls from healing. As well, she does HP percent damage, which gets around damage reduction as well. And on another side note as well, just to add, her heal debuff can also be stacked with other neffs. So at the end of round trigger, if you have 2 or 3 neffs on your team, they will add, let's say you have 3, it will add 3 debuffs of the heal, and it will do 3 active passive attack damages to all the girls. Just remember that. So it does stack. So if you're thinking that one girl does it, the other ones won't trigger as well. They will also stack. The only thing that does not stack is in the Phylum marks, so be aware of that. It's not going to stack whatsoever. Alrighty, next up we have tier 0.5. These are meta dominant as well. They are not as strong as Neff, but they are pretty strong. They're almost up there. They just couldn't get up there. If they did a little bit more damage, maybe we get up there. But these two are support girls in all honesty. But they're so important in the game. Having them alongside a Neff just makes your team so much better in the long run. So we'll start off with Vivian first. Vivian is very unique right now. She is very, very strong. She has the ability to remove debuffs on your team, remove buffs on the enemy girls. She can also reduce the speed at the end of round of girls and reduce their energy. So if they have an active for next round, it can get rid of that active and put you in a stronger position. She also has the ability to do a galaxy mark, which 75% of the damage she takes will redirect it to that. So she's doing a lot of things, and she also will heal the girl with the lowest HP for 30% health, with 30% extra health of their maximum HP. So that's really big. So she usually will be the lowest one most of the time because she's getting hit a lot. She just heals herself back up again. She also removes the Neff's debuff marks, or any type of debuff mark. It compounds over time. She's very good at just supporting your team, and she's being able to help make your team survivability is higher. Then next up we have Izanami. Izanami is very good at preventing active and basic attacks with her active. And essentially, whenever an attack or basic or active attack hits, when her shields are up on your girls, it will convert it into heals, which is awesome. She will also, on her active, petrify the front 2 lines. She has a high percentage to do that. Not 100%, but she has a chance to petrify them. Some girls obviously have a high immunity, so it's not going to work out. But she also has a basic attack which will apply a curse to the girls. So whenever the next time they get healed, it will convert it into damage, which can be really huge. So let's say if it get applied to a Jonah, for instance. Jonah, one of your girls dies, and it heals the Jonah. If she has that curse mark on it, it will convert that heal into damage, which could potentially kill your Jonah, which is very unfortunate. Alrighty, next up, we're going to have Tier 1. These are extremely strong girls. They're not the best in the meta, but they can be performed very well in most all teams they can fit in. You can put them in there with the top other 2 tier girls up there. So we'll start with Kratos. Kratos is very good at dealing damage. The only problem right now is Nami has her shields, so it can really affect the active of Kratos. But if you're smart, you can just either do a speed Kratos with the skin, make her faster than Nami, or you can alternate it to where yours goes second before theirs or first before theirs. You just kind of have to pay attention to which way there is Nami's doing it. So the best thing to do is just do a fake crystal with speed HP on her and make Kratos or do an echoes and just alternate whichever way that the enemy team's Izanami's going. That's your best bet for Kratos. Otherwise, she's a very solid girl, and she's very well at healing herself and doing extra damage when girls are under 35% HP. It does extra damage on her active. Her basic attack also does terrorizer marks, which will instantly terrorize a girl and make her from doing a basic attack, which can essentially hose a rogue. Rogue usually has the lowest HP in your team, and Kratos always targets the lowest HP girl. So if you have a rogue and you're facing Kratos and they're not using an active right away on turn 1, be aware that your rogue may become useless in the long run. Next up, we have Fenrir. Fenrir is very good right now. She has the ability to do lots of passive damage, active damage over time, and she has the ability to heal herself. So you put her in the F1 slot. You just put her as much block as possible, as much HP as well, and give her some damage reduction as well. She becomes a tank, and every time she gets hit and she gets a block, after the third block, she does passive damage on all the enemy girls. And over time, if they just keep hitting Fenrir over and over and over again, she'll just keep dealing damage to the other team while healing herself at the same time, which can be very effective. The only downside here is that Izanami could put a curse on her, and she could heals up, and then she takes the damage, which won't trigger a block. Neff won't trigger a block on it as well. Vivian's Shadow Mark won't trigger the blocks as well, so any damage Vivian take and it's on your Fenrir can be redirected to that. So just be aware of that. There's ways to get around Fenrir's blocks, but she's still very, very strong right now. Next up, we have Psychic. Psychic is a support girl. She's very good. The main point to take away from her is her last ability is 75% chance to stun. If you put a Neutron Blades on her, which I prefer to do, is the better way to do it. Putting her in the F1 slot if you don't have a Fenrir and using her to just stun the enemy girls is just amazing right now. It can be utilized very well. You can essentially put her there and she just takes so much damage turn 1. She just stuns the other girls, and if they have a bunch of already debuffs on them or active debuffs or violent marks, the baptism might not remove the stuns. It might remove something else. So they could be stunned for 2 turns, essentially, just locking them down. It can be really strong. She also has the ability to heal your girls, which is also great. And then, of course, her active will also help do weakening marks on the enemy girls. That way they take more damage. Overall, she's very good paired with a Vivian. Vivian helps remove the Neff debuff heal marks, so that way the Psychic can heal even more and stun, and then just keep the Psychic alive from Vivian's ability to remove the debuff heals and lowest girl HP to heal with the Vivian. So Vivian and Psychic do very well together. On a little side note, so if you have both of them, you can pair them together and put the Psychic in the F1 slot, and it will make things a lot easier for you. Okay, next up, the last in the tier 1, we're going to have Jonah. Jonah is in a weird place right now because her big counter is Fenrir, but if you're not facing a Fenrir team, she can be very good. The best thing to do, honestly, is to make her a tank. Don't do much speed, make her as much HP as possible so she can survive. If you are facing Fenrir, the best antique is going to be a Soul Destruction, and then if you're not facing a Fenrir, you can run Chain Blade, which will just negate all armor and just send all the attack through, which is great as well. So the main point from her is she gets remnant marks every time a girl does an active or basic and it targets an enemy girl. She gets a remnant mark, and as the remnant marks go up higher, when she does her active, she will release all of them at once. She'll do a basic normal active attack, and then after that she'll hit one random girl with one of the remnant marks. So if you have, for instance, 20 remnant marks, it will count down 20 hits after the active. So it'll just start pinging random girls 20 times, and then after that it'll go away. The remnant marks also offer damage reduction, so after you use all the remnant marks, she then becomes vulnerable to attack. So hopefully at the time when you use her, she will already killed a couple girls. And when any girls dies on the battlefield, she heals herself as well. So if whether one of your girls dies or the other enemy girls dies, she will heal herself. So the big point here is to make her go last. That way if the girls are weak, she can finish them off and then heal herself. That way she doesn't have any remnant marks left for damage reduction on her. She can survive because she healed all the way back up, essentially. Next up, we have tier 1.5, ladies and gentlemen. This tier is, the girls have to be placed correctly in the team setup. They have to be positioned correctly for them to work efficiently. We'll start off with Rogue. Rogue, like I said earlier, the only problem with her is if there's Kratoses, which there's a lot of Kratoses in the meta, Kratos can lock her down, essentially. So with a Rogue, you're going to want to put speed and crit on her. A Thorn's Heart with her. You want to make her go as fast as possible and have as much crit chance and crit damage. Now, she does have the ability to redirect damage when she's attacked. So, but that's only after she does a basic attack or active. She gets marks to do that, and she will also boost her crit damage after a basic. She also has the ability to, whenever she does a crit attack, when a crit chance hits, she will perform a passive, and it will hit all the other girls for 100% attack damage. So that's the main takeaway from her. So if you do a basic attack and you hit 2 front lines, she does a crit. She crits on them. She will also do damage to the back line. So then when she goes to do her active, she hits. She will also, and it does a crit chance. Remind you, it will also do passive trigger on all the other girls. Now this will get around Izanami's shields, essentially. The passive will, the normal, basic, and the active will not. So that's a big problem with her on that. But the passive does go through. The biggest problem, though, is that she's not faster than Kratos. So if maybe you could get pink gear on her to make her go faster if the other person doesn't, yes. But overall, she does a lot of damage, but there's so many ways to lock her down currently and just finish her off very quickly on your team. You have the potential of her doing no damage whatsoever. It can just hurt your team. So just be aware that it may come a point in time when she's just not very useful and you just might want to switch her for somebody else. Just be aware of that. Okay, next up, we have Uriel. Uriel is good at, it's not really crowd control, but it's more of locking the passive skills off of girls. Now, with her to be good, you need multiple copies. So if you had 2 or 3 copies, you could see her as a tier 0 team, essentially. But by herself, she is not as overwhelming, but she has the potential. So she can do a basic attack, put a mark on that girl, then do an active and put another mark. And every time at the end of round also, she has it will do at the active or basic, whichever one happens during that turn, she has the chance of doing another attack, which will hit all the girls for 400% of her attack. Now, you keep in mind, you have to have 2 marks on them to lock them out. Plus, it has to trigger and work. So if a girl has 100% immunity, you can put the marks on them, but it doesn't mean it's going to trigger and lock their passive. Just be aware of that. But other girls that don't, yes, it will. So you could potentially lock out Nephilim's passives. You can lock out the Vivian's, Izanami's, Jonah's. You can lock hers out as well. So just be aware that if the girl has high immunity, it could potentially not trigger. But if you have 2 marks and they don't, it'll trigger and it'll lock them out. Okay, next up we have Raphael. Raphael kind of fell because of a bunch of Nephilims in the meta going on right now, because she had put so many debuff heal marks on it, it reduces the Raphael's heals so much. But Raphael's still good if you're only facing 1 Neph, because she can still, on her active, boost your speed, boost your attack, boost the amount of heals you get, and then if she dies, she obviously does a lot of heals. That's the main point in her, is when she dies, she gets a lot of heals. So in AD teams, she's still pretty good. You can still run her in other normal teams. It just depends on what you have going on in the meta in your server or your cluster, so just be aware of that. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to do tier 2. These girls are strong, but they need a heavy team synergy for them to work correctly. Case in point, we'll start with Isun Jacob. Isun Jacob does a passive trigger whenever a girl dies. It does 200% attack damage to the enemy girls, and then it adds a mark and it'll do 200% at the end of the round as well. So the best thing with her is having multiple E and Js, maybe suiciding one of your girls to make it to where it has a bunch of marks early on it, and it does multiple marks at the same time, and then they all trigger at the end of round. Hopefully it will kill one of the girls at the end of round and then trigger again. Stuff like that. It's just like, it's kind of compounding trying to get it. She also has a chance at the frontline enemies to petrify them and reduce their armor. And then the backline, if she hits a backline on her active, sorry, I should have said active before. On her active, it will reduce the speed of the girls on the backline. She also, on her basic attack, has the ability to reduce energy. So whenever she hits a girl, it reduces the energy. It's a big thing to take away from, let's say, if a Kratos has an active coming next turn. You have an E&J. And your E&J hits that Kratos and reduces the energy, and it can't get that active off. That's a huge thing. It can help out as well. But remember, Isu and Jacob is very synergetic. The best thing to do with her is to make a balance between a lot of attack and a lot of HP, and you can add some damage reduction. So Black Magic hat, Eternal Dawn. Eternal Dawn is probably going to be better for her just for the fact because it gives attack, HP, and damage depletion is different than damage reduction, yes, but it still helps block damage. Next up, we have Mio. Mio's pretty self-explanatory. She used to be the best tank in the game. Fenrir came out then, some things changed. But essentially, you just want a damage reduction antique on her, as much HP as possible that you can do, and just throw her in the F1 slot and let her just get controlled by someone by CC and just let her put burn marks on them and just take up all your damage for you. It's pretty easy, self-explanatory. Just as much HP as you humanly can possibly put on her, put on her. Next up is Gabriel. Gabriel got a buff, not as much as we would thought or hoped for, but it was still decent. So she's decent now. She can be used. She essentially, whenever she gets hit, she does a counterattack. She'll put a mark on a girl, and she'll convert that into damage. She's very good at doing crit chance and doing crit damage. She also, when she gets hit and she loses health, she gets a mark and she gets to add to her damage reduction. So the more she gets hit, the more damage reduction she gets. Now, whenever she does the action, she'll remove all of those marks as well. So then she's got to start over again. Just be aware of that. Visible Cloak works good for damage reduction. Eternal Dawn works with her as well. Next up, we're going to have Valera. Valera is going to be one of your fastest girls in the game. She's very good. You're going to use her for crowd control. So you're going to do just a speed setup on her. Best thing to do usually is going to be a fake crystal to try and get off first. You can also do a neutron blades, which will help with her giving her crowd control off, giving a higher percentage rate. So it's up to you on how your meta works in your server cluster, how you're going to want to do that with her. But you're just going to do speed as fast as you can and just try and do some crowd control with her. She's a little squishy, but if you get some crowd control off and lock some girls down, it can be very beneficial. She is faster than a Phylum, so if you can somehow magically get up to petrify or freeze the Nephilim down, you got saved essentially from getting a Nephilim marks on you, which is great. Last up on tier 2, we have Empress Saint. She has fallen from grace, ladies and gentlemen. She used to be broken. There used to be some crazy cheese teams with her, which, we came out and found out was suspected. It happened. But her time has come and gone now. But she's still very good. You just have to put her in the correct team with her. So the best thing to do with her is to give her a lot of health and give her a little bit of damage reduction with her. Immunity control is not really an issue because whenever a girl does a basic or an active attack and it targets one of the other girls, she gets a passive skill trigger which will increase her immunity and her attack. And it will then add burn marks to the enemy girls. And whenever she does her active, she converts all those burn marks into damage. The problem why she's not good anymore, even though she can do decent amount of damage, is that there is Izanami, Vivian. Vivian can remove those burn marks. And we have LB5s with the limit breaks on them on the last ability that gives us shields like Burning Blades does. So it negates for lethal damage, so she can't just instantly kill them like we had at LB3s. So it kind of puts her at a disadvantage because she's trying to just do a bunch of damage at once. But those shields are preventing it from destroying the enemy team just instantly. So it's not very good anymore. Just be aware of that. Okay, lastly, ladies and gentlemen, we have tier 3. These girls are solid choices. Usually people are going to have these more copies of them. They're going to probably build them first to help out just with their teams. The best thing with these is just to convert them into better girls as you get the copies later on. And if this is all you have, then go ahead and use them. They're okay if you place them in the right teams, but still, they're kind of underwhelming. But they're still better than nothing. It's better than other things. So if you don't have other top tier girls and this is what you have, make the best of them. You can make them, use them. Just remember that at some point you would like to upgrade them to further. I'm not going to get into great detail with these ones, but essentially, Kangming silences enemies. She does a lot of crit damage depending on how you build her, and she has the ability on her active to add a a buff to heal. Essentially, it's a buff mark, and it will heal them for so much over so many rounds. Your girls, it's not as much as Raphael by far, but it's still a decent amount of heals. It can help you out. Capsule Girl helps with stuns. She can be paired with, let's say, NGIF. If you have it on your team, Capsule Girl will go first, get some stuns off, and NGIF goes off. She can do more damage from stuns. Capsule Girl, there's a lot of CC immunity in the meta right now still with some girls, so she's not as useful, and her damage is not very overwhelming as it used to be. It doesn't as much because of the damage reduction that's in the meta as well. The NGIF, as we were talking about earlier, she does a lot of damage with getting girls stunned. She has the ability to heal herself as well. So having multiple copies of her can be good as well. But then again, we do have Izanami, Vivian to be able to just remove stuff, buffs and debuffs. Neff doing the marks, lots of damage reduction, passive damage. She's just not performing very well without multiple copies. So just be aware of that. Crystal's in the same format as NGIF. She performs very well with multiple copies of her. So if you have 3 LB5 crystals and she's just locking all of them down, crystallizing the enemy team, she's just doing lots of poison damaging and healing herself constantly, which can be really good. But by herself, she's not very overwhelming. She needs multiple copies, kind of like Uriel as well, as we were stating earlier. So if you have her, that's all you have, that you need some CC, you can use her, but just know that if you have multiple LB5s of her, she can perform very, very well. Next, we have Phoenix. Phoenix, she's kind of fallen off because she's squishy. If a girl dies, she gets extra holy damage. She can do more damage. She gets her energy back when a girl dies. She can keep doing actives basically over and over again each turn if a girl dies. The main problem with her, though, is that she has no sustainability. She has no damage reduction. She's fast. Yes, she's one of the fastest, but her damage is just not high enough to get around damage reduction. It's just not good enough. Wraith, a little bit better than Phoenix just because of the ability that she has the ability to heal herself when girls do actives. She's in the same boat. She's squishy like Phoenix. She does a little bit more damage because she has HP % damage. She gets around damage reduction, but it's not as much, so it's not as overwhelming. But she is very squishy, so she can just die pretty quickly and low health. So even with the shield, she's just going to not do as much. She's just going to die very, very, very quickly on you. Amelia, essentially is a CC girl. She can petrify, and can steal energy as well. She does a little bit of damage. She'll petrify, and she'll steal energy from the enemy girls to keep them from doing actives. If you have her and you build her, she can help you with having the ability to control the enemy team while stealing energy, so that way you keep them off of their actives as much as possible. And lastly on the list, ladies and gentlemen, we have Hottie. Hottie is fallen because there's no longer cheese teams that are available right now. Maybe in the future, if we have a cheese team, she might find another place in it. But as of right now, she still can be a decent support girl if you don't have one of the other ones like Raphael, Psychic, Izanami, Vivian. If you don't have one of those to help you with supporting your team, and you have a Hottie, and that's what you have to use, and you need a little extra support, boosting speed, reducing armor, you can use her. Obviously, if you get a better support girl, I would switch for that girl. But if it's all you have to use her. With that, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have comments that you would like to add, put at the bottom of the video. Give the video a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. And if you're new again and you've watched the whole video, please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you in the next video. Have a good one. Peace out.